Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're listening to this. Welcome, bienvenue, willkommen, bienvenidos, benvenuti, welcome, benvindo, tervetuloa, and if you're listening in Denmark, learn to pronounce your words so we can understand them. Willkommen to our pre-Melodifestivalen podcast. This time, we've actually heard the songs, and we know which 10 bidrag will be fighting it out in the final on Saturday. After our last podcast, we received some fan mail. I'll read it for you now. Dear ESC Tips, blah blah blah, love you, blah blah blah. How can you be so attractive yet so intelligent, blah blah blah. My life is meaningless without you, blah blah blah. One question. How do you select your guests? I'm sure there are thousands of people who want to take part. Well, thank you for the letter, Mother. Actually, this time round, we decided to open it to a phone vote. And although there were suspicious voting patterns emanating from both Stockholm and Helsinki, we decided to let the results stand. So, let me introduce our guests. First up, as always, it's the head honcho, the boss, the owner of ESC Tips. Don't confuse him with some other sucker, because he's actually a man from the West Midlands. It's Gavin Lambert, the Gavster. Welcome, Gavin.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon and good evening to those of you when you're listening to this.
How are you, Gav?
I'm well. I've been at work all day and I've been plugging away at our yearly preview into the Melodifestivalen final, where I exclusively reveal who I think will win. This time last year I was plugging for Robin to win, and that came to fruition. And this year you'll have to wait until later on this evening when I decide to publish that, and obviously my thoughts will be married up with what I say in today's podcast.
Thanks, Gav. Next we have, once again coming back, live from Helsinki, he's valiantly battled against the flu to be with us today. You can find him, in fact you can hire him at tobsonproduktion.fi. Don't forget to spell the Produktion with a K rather than the C. But he's told me that he will not go all the way on the first date. You can also follow him at Tobson Helsinki on Twitter. From Helsinki, it is Tobias Larsson. Welcome again.
Well, hello. Hey. It's easy. It's the same in all the languages, isn't it? I tried saying it in English, in Finnish, and in Swedish, and it's all the same. So, hey, everybody.
Really well, you could say moi.
I could say moi if I'd wanted to. Yeah, I could have. It's great to be back on the show, thanks. And the flu, it always comes in this late part of the season when when all the entries start coming in, so does the germs somehow. But it wouldn't be Melodifestivalen season without a little bit of flu, I think. It makes the picture complete.
You've been infected by the Melodifestivalen bug.
Yes, as always.
I blame Dr. Alban myself, but there you go. And also from Stockholm, we hope that his hangover has gone by now, but somehow we doubt it. It is Aftonbladet's Melodifestivalen and Eurovision correspondent. He also writes all year round for Aftonbladet and particularly Nöjesbladet. It is from Stockholm, Torbjörn Ek. Welcome, Torbjörn.
Thank you very much. Hello there. How are you?
Possibly feeling better than you.
Yes, I'm quite sure that most of the world is feeling better than I am at this very moment, but that's fine.
Okay, excellent. Let's start. About a week or so ago, the big story broke about the vote rigging in Melodifestivalen. Do you think that this will play a role this year? And has it changed public opinion? I'll go to you first, Tobias.
Well, I'd say that I think it's going to matter very little in the final, because usually all the viewers come in the final, and it's one of the most watched TV shows of the year in Sweden. It's like half the population is going to tune in and vote. So you would have to rig an awful lot of computers to vote for your entry for it to make a difference. I think it could have damaged the SVT brand a bit, though, because they have admitted to having been aware of this, that this has been going on. But since apparently it has not influenced the results in any significant way, then they haven't dealt with it. And I think that seems very naive, and the audience will probably not be very pleased with that kind of response. Because Swedes, I can understand that there wasn't a rule. There hasn't been a rule that forbids this kind of action. And they say that they want it to be fair play, and they expect everyone to do fair play. Because Swedish people are like that. We expect everyone to go into a competition and play fair. And now it's not happening, and I think it will affect people. I don't think it will stop them from voting, though.
I did read, Torbjörn, that apparently there are rumours that this one example of vote rigging took place last year. Do we know much more about that? And is it the case that SVT are only just been made aware and checked the figures going back last year?
Yes, that is the fact. They SVT hasn't checked for this ever, even though they've known that these type of computer programs has been around since at least 2008. They haven't really cared to check the results and check the voting figures. So they had, when the story broke last Thursday, they had to go back to see to check the results again for this year and the year before. And they claim that they now know which entry bought the 2,500 votes, but they also say that it didn't affect last year's results. More than that, we don't know. We can speculate and we can guess, but in Sweden we don't name and shame people too often. So I'm not going to speculate more than saying that it was an entry last year that paid for around 2,500 votes. But I'm not agreeing with Tobias about 2,500 votes not being important, because in 2009, when Malena Ernman won, 2,500 votes would have been enough for Karolina af Ugglas to win instead. Even though there are hundreds of thousands of votes in the final, as little as 2,500 votes can actually make a difference.
Well, yeah, I fully agree with that. I'm more like, I'm thinking still that it would make more sense maybe to try to pay your way into Andra chansen or pay your way into the final from a semi rather than try to rig the final. Because being in the final is winning for most of the acts anyway. It wouldn't necessarily be better to win the final than to be in the final. So I think it would be more interesting to rig a voting in order to get to the final, or at least to get the extra exposure that Andra chansen would bring along. So that's what I mean, really. I think that the winner in the final won't be a result of vote rigging. That would be a big surprise for me anyway.
No, absolutely, it would be a surprise, and I think that, well, it was. I don't think you wrote the article, Torbjörn, but it was Aftonbladet that pointed out that last year it would only have taken something like 2,000 extra votes for Robin Stjernberg to be knocked out of Andra chansen, wouldn't it?
Exactly. It was actually the figures, I think it's 2,100 votes or something like that.
Yeah.
Would have knocked him out of Andra chansen, and we would have had Martin Rolinski in the final instead. But at the same time, in the finale, we will have around 4 million viewers, which is almost half the Swedish population, and there will be maybe up to 1 million votes being cast. People will still be voting because they want their favorite song to win. So I don't think we've lost any confidence.
Actually, aside from the voting controversy, there's been a massive betting controversy this week, and that is that the Swedish national bookie has cancelled all of its Melodifestivalen bets.
That's Svenska Spel, isn't it?
Yes, and I'd leave the pronunciation to you as always. And we thought that was isolated to Sweden. Fair enough, it's a state-owned bookie. But then Unibet took the decision to void all of their markets. And certainly the contributors to ESC tips, collectively we've all kind of thought that, okay, as enthusiastic viewers of Melodifestivalen, and we really do kind of go into the detail of the acts when they're first announced, when we highlighted a number of artists like Ace Wilder that were 100 to 1 in December, and we all placed bets at 100 to 1, and now Ace is down to 4 to 1, 3 to 1 in places. We think that Unibet knew that they were onto a loser, so they voided the market. They are the only other bookmaker outside of Sweden to do that. And unfortunately, a lot of people who, let's say, use other bookies to balance their own spreadsheets and their books have now lost a massive chunk of equity on Ace Wilder, I being one of them. So if Ace does win, I'll be onto a loser because Unibet cancelled my bets. So it's quite unfair that they've done that, and I would urge anyone that has placed a bet with Unibet to complain and to keep complaining. And if they don't reinstate the bets, if Ace does win, or let's say you placed a bet for Sanna, if she wins and you've lost out because of that, you can complain to the LGA, which is the governing body in Malta where Unibet are based. I'll publish the details on ESC Tips later on this evening. And I suggest that, yes, if you are a loser, you complain.
Okay, we'll move on. Can I ask you, Torbjörn, to start with, what are your surprises from Melodifestivalen this year, and what are your disappointments?
Surprises, I would say that Ace Wilder is actually in the final. That was probably the biggest thing that happened this year, because young, modern pop acts with a female lead singer, normally it doesn't work that well in Melodifestivalen. So this is a huge thing, and it's hopefully next year be even more exciting. So I'm very happy for that, even though it's not one of my favorite songs. But I think it's a very good thing for the competition, because normally it's just the young cute boys that succeeds. But this year she might be the winner, even if she doesn't win on Saturday. She might still be the big winner walking out of this competition. My big disappointments, well, I would say that Josef Johansson didn't make it to the final. I really loved his song, and that type of song is very popular in Sweden. So I was surprised and saddened by him not making it. I'm also, one other big disappointment was that Helena Paparizou didn't make it straight to the finals. She should have been there from the start. Going via Andra Hansen will probably not be a good thing for her. I think that will affect the result in the finals. Another sad thing is that even though I do not listen to rock music that much, I'm very sad that Outrigger and the song Echo didn't make it to the finals, because they should be there as well.
I would actually agree with you with Outrigger. It would have given, I think, a bit more variety to the final. That's my personal point of view.
Exactly.
And I thought that it wasn't actually kind of, as Tobias was mentioning in the last podcast, kind of generic kind of Schlager rock. It was actually proper rock, with cages. There wasn't quite the growling that we thought there may be, but it was virtually there. And I think Helena Paparizou not making it from the first one, that would also count as a surprise, I think. Because, I mean, we pointed out that it was Yohio's and Helena's to lose from that first deltävling, that first semi-final. But it proved, Andra Hansen proved that the first semi-final was definitely the strongest, given that the two that came through from Andra Hansen were also from the first heat in Malmö. Gavin, what about your surprises and disappointments?
My surprise is how utterly atrocious Anton's song is. It's absolutely abysmal. There's no hook, and his vocals just seem even more exposed this year. Whereas they turned the mix up last year, and at least it was a much stronger song, and at least he sounded as if he could perform it. Whereas this year, it's dire, absolutely dire. And I think he'll probably finish something like 6th or 7th. But my big surprise would be, like you've said, that Outrigger didn't make the final. I thought it was a really great song. I did pick them out as potential finalists, and unfortunately they didn't make it. But I'd say another disappointment, just to bolt on there, is just the general song quality of the year as a whole. It's almost felt as if the pop songs that were competing, they all sounded like B-sides. There were very few that got to the final that you could really say, yeah, there's some real competition here. Ace has the strongest hook of the dance tracks, but if you look at Oscar and Anton, there's just nothing comparable to what perhaps Danny Saucedo sent a couple of years ago. There's nothing there. I'm so surprised by that.
Tobias, would you agree that it's been disappointing, and what have been your surprises and disappointments this year?
I would actually not agree with that. I think that song-wise, this year has been much more interesting than, for instance, last year. Because last year I thought was perhaps the most generic song year of Melodifestivalen since the semi-finals were inaugurated in 2002. I thought last year was just, painful to watch, very songs written in order to win a song contest and not much more. And I thought that was really sad. And this year I found the songwriting much more interesting. I'm actually quite pleased with the general standard. And my biggest positive surprise this year is all the surprises we've had. Because it seems that Sweden usually votes in quite a predictable way. And this year we've avoided that because in 3 out of 4 semi-finals we've had at least one surprise. We had Ellen in the first one, we had Panetos in the second one, and we had Ace in the third one. And it seems at the same time that people are quite pleased with this, that with the exception of Helena perhaps, and perhaps Outrigger, it felt like people weren't really upset about songs being missing from final. I also agree that I thought Josef was brilliant. I have no idea what the Swedish audience was thinking when they rejected his song. But I think that we have a very interesting lineup for the final, and I'm very happy about that. From a sort of pop music kind of angle, I think that this final is the best one for many, many years. I'm really excited about the final for the first time in years. My biggest disappointment this year is that SVT has completely failed to get the show going. That everything apart from the entries has been so lackluster and so grey and uninspired and so uninteresting, which is a big problem because they've spent years and years taking the focus off the entries. The entries have become sort of like the little decoration on the cake, while the big thing in Melodifestivalen has been the actual TV show. And this year, when the TV show isn't working, you can tell that people are putting so much focus and emphasis on the show that they think that the music is bad when the show is bad. And people haven't been voting this year. The voting numbers have been really, really low, which has opened up for some really interesting surprises. But on the other hand, it's interesting to see how much the TV show or lack of TV show seems to influence the TV viewers when it comes down to voting and how they perceive the songs. And for me, it's disappointing that SVT, that is such a fantastic TV company in so many aspects, have failed so completely in the field this year.
I was actually going to ask about that, so it's probably a good opportunity to talk. Torbjörn, a lot of people have mentioned about how disappointed they are in the actual show. You've got 2 talented presenters, talented from previous works in Noel Rafai and Anders Jansson. But there's been something about the script. Possibly it's the lack of Edvard Afzelian writing the script. What do you think, Torbjörn?
I think that you're being far too nice. It's been a complete fiasco this year with the hosts and everything in between. All the interval acts and opening acts and stuff like that. Because they haven't cherished the Melodifestivalen brand. They've been too lazy to plan it properly. And they've taken the wrong producer to be behind it. And they're not using proper script writers either. They're writing it themselves, the hosts. They are comedians, and I like both of them, but they've been terrible at hosting Melodifestivalen, and they should be ashamed of themselves, and Christer Björkman should be ashamed of himself, because in the end, it is Christer Björkman who's the executive producer, and he is the one that gave the thumbs up for this constellation with Noor and Anders, and he should have stopped it way earlier than going to broadcast. He should have noticed that there is something going on that isn't working properly, and perhaps put in a new producer or hired proper scriptwriters or anything. But they didn't realize it until it was too late, and then that's why it is such a fiasco this year.
I can only agree with that. Having watched not every single second of it, I'll admit I was watching other things, but just some of the little side numbers. I preferred it when Eurovision was such a triumph. Best parts were when Sweden was laughing at itself, whereas mocking their kind of Nordic cousins, that just sounds like to me it feels like a bit of Big Brother Sweden bullying, if you see what I mean. And the lack of chemistry between them. I mean, yes, Anders Jansson, he's 47, or El Rafai is 26. They always seemed like a bit of an odd couple when they were chosen. So hopefully there'll be changes for next year. Anyway, I think we should probably get on to the lineup of the final. So, on Saturday, we will have the following songs in running order. Natural by Anton Ewald, Songbird by Ellen Benediktsson, Blame It on the Disco by Alcazar, Yes We Can by Oscar Sia, Bröder by Linus Svenning, Survivor by Helena Paparizou, To the End by Yohio, Undo by Sanna Nielsen, Efter Solsken by Panetos, and Biddy Doing Nothing by Ace Wilder. So, there's quite a few questions to ask here. Will we see a Robin Stjernberg again? And will we see something winning from Andra Chansen? The favourite would probably have to be Helena Paparizou out of the two. Tobias, what do you think?
I think that everyone internationally is completely overestimating Helena Paparizou at this point, because she already lost once. I would be very, very surprised, because, again, she isn't a very big act in Sweden. I can imagine that the juries will keep her pretty high in their ranking. She might even be in the lead after the juries have voted. And then I can see her do something that Måns Zelmerlöw and Sarah Dawn Finer did in 2009, do well in the jury voting and then bomb completely in the televoting. I'm not convinced that she's gonna... I don't think she will knock the audience over. I don't think the audience suddenly realize that, oh, what a wonderful entry that we completely missed the first time around. I think, like Tobbe said before, I think it damaged her chances to go through Andra Chansen. So I'd be very surprised if she's better than third in the end. That would surprise me immensely.
Okay, Tobbe, does she stand a chance?
I'm kind of agreeing with Tobias, even though I think that she can become third, but I think she will be top 5 at least. But there is no chance in hell that she's going to win, because just as Tobias said, she's already lost once. Her song isn't good enough to win the whole competition. The Swedish audience didn't like it the first time. They're not gonna. I love it, but I can't imagine people voting for her to win the finals. She will get points from the juries, but not enough to make her a winner.
Gavin, what would you add to that?
I kind of agree, even though I've originally mooted that, or I've certainly argued that she could potentially win. But since doing my research, I've more settled on that she'll top the jury score, because her song is the most instant out of all the songs. Her vocal is the strongest, and that's what the international juries tend to mark upon. And I do think, yes, she's going to finish top of the jury score. As soon as the televote starts coming in, her points will start shrinking. And it'll be a couple of the other contenders that will nip ahead of her. I still have a second on my current score tally, but I'm still working points out in my head, and it could be that she drops to third, but I can't see her dropping out the top 3. I still think that comfort zone from the jury score will keep her up high. Plus, I also think a lot of the new viewers coming to watch the final might buy into that song in much the same way they bought into Robin's. I'm interested to see what the momentum factor is with Helena, mainly because she dropped out of the top 10 in iTunes and now she's back in the top 10. That suggests to me there's a little bit of momentum. I'm also interested in the Swedish charts. Ace Wilder entered the charts, as did Sanna. So I'm interested that this Friday, if Helena enters the charts, maybe there's an outside chance.
Would you really say that she's got the strongest vocal performance? I mean, compared to, say, Sanna Nilsson and Ellen Benediktsson, for example.
Ellen has the strongest vocal, but she doesn't have the most instant song. Very insipid. I've written in my notes that those people that forgot to go to the toilet before the show started will find an opportunity to disappear during her song. But when it comes,
they've got small bladders in that case because it's only up second.
The tea starts to kick in for song 2, doesn't it? I think Helena will top the jury score. No doubt about it. I've said that the juries mark for vocals, but they also mark, a lot of these juries mark for hooks. And the hookier the song, the higher the points. If you look at Robin, for instance, that had a big hook last year. If you look down in history, you're looking at Popular as a hooky song. You're also looking at Lorien, Danny Saucedo. They were all getting quite high marks. They weren't as vocally strong, but it was a hooky song. And I think Helena, she covers both of those aspects. That perhaps Sanna doesn't quite hit as much. I think the undo chorus is slightly awkward. It's not as instant. It's slightly distracting.
So for you, Helena is the biggest hooker.
Yeah, if you want to say it that way.
Anyway, Tobias, what did you think of Sanna Nilsson's song? I mean, we discussed this a lot in the previous podcast about how beloved Sanna is by the Swedish public. What did you think when you heard the song?
I was actually, since I'm not on location for Melodifestivalen, I heard the 60-second clip that was published on Thursday, and then I heard the 2:30 clip that was published on Saturday. Mm-hmm. And when I heard these, it didn't really... I heard that she sang really well, and it had an interesting build-up and everything, but it didn't really hit me like that. But then when I heard it in full, when I heard the full 3 minutes, then I was like, yes, this is a qualifier. I think I even wrote on Twitter that if Sanna doesn't qualify straight to the final, then the universe is broken and needs to be fixed. Because it was so obvious for me that this is going to be drowned in televotes. And she has this thing, I think... At first, everyone wrote that this is such a masterpiece of a song. Then, once it qualified, people started going like, oh, maybe it wasn't as good as we thought it was, and sort of wanted to change their minds a bit. I think it's a very, very strong contender. I think what really works against it with the televoting is that Fredrik Kempe managed to get 4 songs in the final. And this is the 4th time that Fredrik Kempe will be in the TV screen waving at the audience. And that can annoy the Swedish audience. Swedish people want modest people and modesty. And someone to stand there with 4 songs out of 10, that can actually annoy people and work against this song. But otherwise...
That's bullshit.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I've been speaking to so many people who's been like, are there really this few songwriters in Sweden? Why are there the same names every week? I think it's really beginning to get to people.
But that
okay, talk, please.
Yeah, I totally disagree there, because I don't think people will care when Sanna starts singing. They might be annoyed.
I hope you're right.
They might be annoyed when they see Fredrik Kempe on their screens. But the second after, when Sanna starts singing, they've forgotten about him and they will only listen to the song. I'm convinced that the fact that Fredrik Kempe has written 4 songs in the finals won't affect Sanna's chances of winning.
I hope so, because it would be a shame, because I think it's one of the best songs in the running. I hope it will do well.
Okay, fair enough. Gavin, what Tobias said, that's an example of Jantelagen, which you've been reading about, I know. Now we come on to, the person who won the public vote last year, Yohio. Does he have a chance again? He's singing from 7th position. Gavin, what do you think?
I think it's a major threat, and I think the book is, at the moment, underrate the televote threat that Yohio possesses. His televote was streets ahead of what Robin achieved last year. In fact, Yohio acquired more than 100,000 more votes than his nearest competitor, which makes him an immense threat. The biggest question is, will that vote hold up? Have people moved on from Yohio? The fact that he qualified from Heat 1 suggests maybe not, that there is still that fan base. What concerns me is that he never seems to do well in the charts. He briefly entered the iTunes charts in the top 10, but then drifted out. He's now at number 38 as we speak today. But whereas last year, Robin and Anton entered the main Swedish charts, Yohio again still didn't, and not until after the Melodifestivalen final. So his support is somewhat difficult to gauge. In terms of his current song, I've compared it against Ulrik Munther's song from last year, just in terms of style, the fact that it's guitar-based, and it does have that similar kind of vibe. It's a upbeat kind of Coldplay song. He performs it well. It plays to his vocal strengths much better. So I'm already predicting that he's going to get a much higher jury score. I don't think he's going to get 80-odd points like Ulrik, but I have kind of guessed that he'll get somewhere in the 60-point mark. What we also have to bear in mind is that countries like Germany, Spain, Italy, and I think there's one other by my reckoning, I think France, they always tend to give 6 or more points to a guitar-based song. Bearing in mind that Yohio is the only guitar-based song in this final this year, should mean that he'll get a good spread of points from those juries. So I think he's on for a minimum of 3rd, and if his televote holds up, he'll win.
Okay, fair enough. I'll go to Tubba next, just so we give Tobias a chance to tell you that you're talking bullshit. Tubba, what do you think about Yohio?
Well, now I want to say that Gavin is talking bullshit. Yohio stands no chance in hell winning Melodifestivalen this year. I'm 100% sure that he will not win, and he might even be bottom 5, because his song is much less interesting than last year, and the Swedes aren't. He doesn't attract the same fans this year as last year, because last year he was a novelty. People he was something new and something fresh, and now he's just, it's that guy again, looking like a Japanese cartoon.
Hello Kitty.
Yeah, exactly. And also, since turned from white and pink to black and gold in his outfit, it doesn't feel as happy either. So I don't think he will get as many of the kid votes, because the kid votes will instead go to Oscar Sia, who has a very happy song and a happy sound. So I'm convinced that Yohio will he won't make it. I wouldn't be surprised if he does a Måns Zelmerlöw, as Måns Zelmerlöw did during Hope and Glory, getting really low points from the audience and having to sit in the green room, realizing that he wasn't as popular as he thought. I think Yohio and Anthony Ewald might bomb both of them this year.
Tobias, Yohio, no chance. What do you think?
I'm completely following that train of thought. I'm also thinking that he made a very unfortunate change of image, or sort of retuning of his image. So he's like a less interesting version of what he was last year. And the song could be better. I don't know. That's, a matter of taste, I guess. I wasn't a big fan of his song last year either. But even if this song is better, it's less interesting. it has much less of him in it, has much less personality. As you said, Ulrik Munther could have sung it. Anyone could have sung it. Andreas Jonsson could have sung it himself. And it's I don't understand this move from the Yohio main center. What were they thinking? I think he's bottom 3 material this year. I don't see the appeal at all. I think he only qualified because he opened the first semi-final and people were happy to see him again. But I think his moment has gone completely.
Fair enough. I would just like to say that I think it's the best song in there. So, different.
Yes, anyone could have
different opinions about songs. It's the best song in there for me.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And I'm not a kid. I'm a 39-year-old indie fan.
Yeah, I'm kind of hanging up now. The best song in there?
Yes.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Anyway, let's go on to Alcazar. Obviously, their comeback was much talked about, much looked forward to, and certainly a lot of Eurovision fans on Twitter and on Facebook have been really, really bigging them up. They were huge favourites before we'd heard all the songs. Gavin, do you know if that's still the case? Are Alcazar favourites to win right now?
No, they are drifting. They were quite favoured. They were down to like about 4-1 a few weeks ago, and now they are pretty much nearing Yohio's odds. So confidence has lacked, and I think it's the shrewdies out there have realised that the juries will mark them down simply on the basis that they are barely singing during that song.
Absolutely. Okay. Torbjörn, tell me about Alcazar. Do they have a chance?
Yep.
Are they going to win?
I don't think they're going to win this time. The song is a bit weaker than other of their entries, and they are kind of getting old. We've seen it before, but at the same time, no one can, as Alcazar, get the arena in a party mood, and that will
started.
Exactly, and that will make people happy. And with them in the arena, the TV viewers will also feel that party going on. But I don't think that is enough to make them win. I would suggest they might get high scores from the audience, but not from the jury.
Tobias, what do you think? Do you agree with Torbjörn about that?
Well, I love Alcazar, and I've done that for many, many years, but I was surprised to see. I wonder if I want them to listen to this or if I want them not to listen to this, but they were surprisingly lazy this time around. If I had made a big comeback, if I had been like a big star that was really anticipated, I would have tried finding a stronger song to start with. I find it surprisingly weak, this song. It's effective, but it's not a very strong song. And then the dancing was a little bit out of sync at times, and at crucial points where it was actually visible on screen, where people would notice. And people who don't usually pay attention to these things also noticed that they weren't singing. That some of them were miming large parts of the chorus. And I think that turns people off, because there has been a lot of talk about this kind of, double tracking, and that you have a backing singer who backs up for you. And people still don't really get that. They don't understand that. And it's a little bit sniffed at in Sweden. It's seen as a little bit of cheating still, and people don't like it. So I'm surprised Alcazar didn't make more of an effort. They just went in with their old and tried to play it with their old popularity. And that surprised me. I still think they could get a whole lot of votes in a televote, but I can't see the international juries vote for them, seriously. It would be a huge surprise if they would be better than, say, 5th.
That's what I've put them in, 5th.
Okay, 5th, you say. That's interesting. So, we've so far discussed out of the finalists, and we're, running fairly short of time here. We've discussed Sanna Nilsson, we've discussed Helena Paparizou, we've discussed Yohio, we've discussed Alcazar. Torbjörn, is there anybody else that you think we've missed that is a real contender?
I would say Ace Wilder. Absolutely. I think
Last.
she, as I said before, exactly. She starts as number 10 with a really modern pop song, and I think she will be the winner this week, no matter if she wins the competition or not. But I think she might be top 3. Anton Ewald, not so much, because his song is weaker and he's not as interesting this year as he was last year. So watch out for Ace Wilder.
Okay, Ace Wilder for Torbjörn. Gavin, what do you think?
Yeah, I've always marked down Ace as a threat. The one thing that I've mentioned to fellow punters is that, like Alcazar, she relies on quite a bit of playback assistance, so her vocals do suffer, and I think that's what the jury will mark her down for. In terms of jury points, I don't think she can outscore what Anton achieved last year, so you're looking at a points range between 40 and 50, maybe a little bit more if they buy into the hook. But given that Robin just won with a jury score of 75 points, I think that's going to rule Ace out.
Okay, but is there any other contender that you can think of that we haven't really discussed yet?
I think it's just the 3 that we've talked about: Helena, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Sana.
Okay, and finally you, Tobias.
I'd say Ace Wilder as well. I think she's a possible winner in my book, because the reason that they have put her in 10th place in the running order is really intriguing me, and it makes me think that SVT knows something that we don't know. That there could have been a real surprise score for her in the third semi. I always had the feeling with that song before it qualified that it was a really good song. I actually liked it. It's I think it's my personal favorite this year out of all the entries in Melodifestivalen. And I thought that had this been the entry of Moldova, then Sweden would have loved it. They would have loved her, and they would have loved the song, and they would have loved the attitude and the stage show, but they're never going to buy it in Melodifestivalen. So my jaw dropped completely when she made it to the final, when she qualified. And I am thinking that if she broke through that way, maybe she has broken through even more than we thought, because another thing that I've noticed with this entry is that many people who didn't like it at first, it has grown on them immensely. So many people keep saying that, well, I didn't get it at all at first, but now it's really, really catchy, and the radio is playing it quite a lot. So, and I also have a feeling that the juries might find themselves surprisingly smitten by it. And I also think that the jury scores can be quite even this year. I'm not sure the international juries will influence as much as they've done some other years, in case they have a very even scores. And then that leaves it completely open for a surprise in the televotes.
Well, yes, I mean, obviously the international jury had a huge effect last year because Yohio topped the televote. Do you think that if the international jury takes it away from, if you like, the people's choice again, that there might be moves to change it somehow? Torbjörn?
Well, I'm quite sure they won't. It will be the people's choice to win this year, because I'm convinced they will be. Even if the jury would decide, I don't think SVT is going to change it anyway, because they want that tension. And people will be extremely upset, of course, if there's another winner than the people's choice. But I think that's good for Melodifestivalen. They need people to talk about it, and they need the buzz. And that will definitely become a buzz if it happens. So I don't think they will change any rules.
No, fine. Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to ask the final question now. If I hold a gun to your head and I ask you to predict a winner now, you've just got one choice. Gavin, who's going to win?
Sanna Nilsson, mainly because she's the only contestant I think that can do well on both halves of the vote.
Tobbe.
Sanna Nilsson, absolutely.
Tobias.
I say Sanna Nilsson as well. I'm hoping for something else, but yes, I think Sanna Nilsson is the most likely winner.
And I'm going to say Yohio just because I can. And because I like the song. Okay, that brings us to the end of our podcast. I'd like to say an extra special thank you to our two special guests today. Thank you so much, Tobias Larsson from Helsinki.
You're welcome.
And thank you once again, Torbjörn Ek. Thank you both, gentlemen, for making your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Gavin, again.
No, thank you, Andy, for hosting it, and thank you to our guests.
We'll be back with another podcast, a series of podcasts before Eurovision. 3, 4, 5 maybe preview podcasts. They'll be coming in April or so, once all the songs have been chosen. All that remains for me to say is thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.